Hey, my name is Sam. I'm a software developer turned illustrator, and I wanted to make a video today to kind of just document my process of designing my first greeting card collection and sort of hopefully give some inspiration out there to anybody who needs a little bit of help with generating ideas, being consistent with drawing and creating. Because it's something that I really struggled with for years and years, and I finally found a system that works really well for me, and I wanted to share it. So thank you for joining, and I'll just sort of start to get into it and talk a little bit about how I got to where I am and how I sort of design and create and draw. I'm a digital illustrator, and I have a background in the arts, but during the pandemic, I retrained as a software developer and worked in that field for a few years and then burnt out. And now I'm trying to build up an illustration business and make money from my creativity and hopefully share a little bit about what I learned along the way. So yeah, welcome to my first video. I'm in the middle of designing greeting cards, and I really want to do like a cohesive card collection that I can put on my website and also add to my portfolio. I also want to sell them as wholesale for stockists and hopefully do trade shows. Those are my goals. And I know those are big goals, and so personally I definitely thrive with some sort of structure. And I sometimes know as like a creative person, structure doesn't always come easy for me, but I definitely do my best work when I have systems in place to follow. So yeah, this is just how I've been able to kind of be successful so far at creating consistent pieces that I'm like actually really proud of and happy with, and that is something I've always wanted and have finally gotten to that point. So how I do it. The system that I use currently is the same one for greeting cards, but it's also the same one I used to design my first collection. And my first collection was like a baking kind of one, which I can show a little bit if anybody's interested, but I won't show it in this video. But yeah, so I used that system for the first collection I did, and then this next greeting card one, I sort of just followed the same thing, and I'm finding it's working really well, so I thought I'd use it as an example. This is one that I designed last week, and it's an example of like a finished one, and I will show examples of current ones and talk you through kind of the one I'm working on now. So yeah, where to start? I guess the first thing I do is I have my sketchbook here. I'm not going to open it, I'm not going to show it. It's not very pretty. It's not aesthetic, or like it doesn't look good. But I have it here because I want to talk about thumbnails. And you know, everybody has different ways of creating and generating ideas. Thumbnails for a long time didn't work well for me. And if anybody doesn't know what a thumbnail is, it's basically where you just like create like a little box in your sketchbook and then like literally just like divide up the I'm not gonna open this. You divide up the like page into little squares, and then you just like basically getting the idea from your hand from your brain into your hand and on the paper. It doesn't look good. It's literally just a way of generating an idea. So sometimes that does work for me, but not always. What does work for me actually is writing things down in a list. I'm very much a list person, and I don't know, just yeah, it's how my brain works. So that's what I did for my greeting cards. And I approached it because greeting cards, you're combining text with imagery. It's a bit different, but I started with the text because I feel like the text is like the main sort of, I mean, they work in harmony. The image and the text work together, right? But I thought, yeah, start with text and then build the imagery around that. So I kind of just like thought about like what kind of greeting cards I've seen in the past, like what I see in the shops, what I've gotten personally myself, what am I gravitated towards, you know, like what do I like, and what do I buy for friends, you know, and I made a really, really long list in my notebook of everything. Then from there, I went through each one and I, you know, crossed them off. Eventually I came down with this list with 20 And I think 20 is good for a first collection. I would like it to be bigger, but I think that's a good goal for now. Make an achievable goal, and then, I'll do 20 more once I hit this, if I feel like that's the right direction. So I started, as I said, with the text and wrote down the text on one side, and then I paired each one with what I thought might be something nice, or what I kind of thought of, or examples of cards that I had seen that I really liked, things like that. So I had just paired the two things up. So on one side is the text, one side is the imagery that I want to do. Then basically it's just a matter of working through each one and checking them off. It's not as simple as that, though. That sounds really easy, but it's not. So because I did this list a few weeks ago, when I actually go to sit down to do it, I might not be feeling that one that day, or I might be like, well, that's really vague, I don't know, what is that? Or I might add something else in, like this one, for example. I think I literally just wrote like twisting vines, and then I was like, well, like, I don't want to just do twisting vines, I want something a bit more, I don't know, fun. I like animals, so I added in this bear with kind of some twisting flowers and vines. And then of course I had to add some bees, because bears and bees, and I don't know, I thought it was cute. So yeah, for the kind of, okay, so a few different things, right? There's the composition, there's the color, there's the subject matter, and there's the text. So I'll go through each kind of one and how I do it. So when I was working as a software developer, we used something called Figma all the time. And I love Figma. It's really good if you're a designer, developer. It's the industry standard as far as I know. But it actually works really well for this too. So I have it on my iPad here. You can get it as an app and it's free. I just used the free one because I'm not going to pay for it. So I'm sitting down yesterday to start this new card, and I have my list in front of me, and I've checked off, I got the bear done. So now the next one I wrote down is May Your Days Be Wild and Blooming with a meadow and chrysanthemums. I think I'm pretty happy with that, although I think I'd rather not do the meadow, because I did a meadow already in another card a few days ago, and I'm feeling more like something a little bit more just like focused, like flowers. So I've opened up a whiteboard in Figma, and it's this kind of just like a mood board software kind of way to gather images and inspiration. And this is how I sort of start getting my source reference images, is through this. And I have Figma on my iPad here, but I also have it on my laptop here. And I find that it actually works better on my laptop when I'm gathering the images. So what I'll do is I'll take Figma and put it on one side of my screen on my laptop, and then I'll take whatever image gathering inspiration source you like. For me, it's Pinterest or Google Images, although I don't love either. I don't love Pinterest because I find that lately there's been a lot of AI, there's always been a lot of advertisements. But yeah, I'm looking for something better. So if anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. But for now, it's Pinterest. So I start gathering, I type in, chrysanthemum into Pinterest, and I start gathering all of these images. And I literally can just like click and drag into Figma. I don't have to copy and paste. It's the easiest thing. It's really nice. And that's why I'm using Figma for the most part, other than I like to be able to arrange things that I want to. I know you can do that in like Canva and other kind of ones, but I don't know. Figma is what I was used to, and I think it does work very well. So that's what I'm using now. So I started grabbing any sort of image I'm drawn to. I'm not being too picky about it. I'm literally thinking, ooh, that's pretty, or, oh, I like that color, or, oh, I like the way that like petal curves out, or I really like the composition of like the kind of almost like a waterfall effect of like flowers. Like that's really nice. I'm starting at this stage to think a little bit about color. I'm starting to think about composition as I'm clicking and dragging images in and gathering images. I think this is such a valuable step because it really does get my brain going with like, oh, that would be really pretty if it was like coming down like from a corner like it is here, but then you also had other things over here, and you know, it kind of like snowball effects, like, you know. And so I'm thinking about the composition of, oh, I don't know what I did there. That's okay. I'm thinking about the composition, and so that's why I started gathering these like blue and white Chinese porcelain vases as well, because I thought that would be a really pretty way to kind of anchor things in, because I didn't want to do a pattern, even though I love making patterns and that's something I want to explore in the future. For a greeting card, I wanted, you know, an actual concrete solid image to go with the text. So in this case, no pattern. I needed something to anchor it, something to create like a scene, create context, etc. So I grabbed a couple of the blue and white vases. I did a search for those as well, and I really liked these. I settled on this one in the end, actually, which you'll see. I think that one was a really nice shape, so I used that as my inspiration. And because I was already on my laptop doing this for this card, I took a look at what I have next on my list after I'm finished with this one, which is going to be like a You're My Cup of Tea one, which you can see here. So I also gathered some teacups, some teapots. I gathered some patterns that I really liked because I like doing patterns in the background a lot of times. Obviously, this is somebody else's work, right? I'm not going to copy it exactly, but it's really nice to have some sort of reference, be like, oh, I really like the way, you know, yeah, the way like that leaf curves out here, or I like the color palette, or I like something small and ditzy, so maybe I can take like a flower example from here and mix it. You know what I mean? Like, I personally think that's okay. I don't think that's copying. I think that's just using somebody else's work as inspiration, and making it your own, which is sort of, you know, how you come up with your style as well. So yeah, so this is for my next one. You can see from my baking collection, I had like gathered a bunch of other, like, you know, I did a tomato tart at one point, so I was gathering lots of tomato things. I liked plate edges because, you know, I was doing baking and food and things, so the plate edges were like, you know, important that way. Patterns again, but yeah, so I have everything here, and just to avoid having to pay for Figma, I just kind of group things together all on the same whiteboard, and that has worked absolutely fine so far. So that's how I get my images, and then because I'm on my iPad, I can click, I can hit the 3 dots, I can hit export, and I always export as a JPEG, and then from there I can export it, and then I save it, and then it's in my photos, and then that way when I go into Procreate, I can open it as a reference, which is really nice. So that's what I do. That's how I get my images. And I use my little reference window. You can also add images directly onto your canvas if you want. I know different people do different things, but for me, I really like the reference window that pops up. Actually, I can just show it here. So I can go like this. I can hit reference. Yeah, and you can see this one. I was using the kind of like waterfall-y looking ones to kind of, yeah, find inspiration. And like you can have it open and look, and that way I don't have to have it up on my laptop or anything. I can just literally keep it all within the same screen, which is really nice. So yeah. Okay, so having all these images and everything in Figma and being able to bring them in here has really got me thinking, and that way when I go to actually sit down and create something, I do have a blank template in front of me, right? A blank page, but I know I have ideas. I know what I'm going to do. And I feel like, at least for me, that was the hardest part. So what I did here was, I work in layers, but this, even if you're not a digital illustrator or if you use a different software or whatever, the concept still applies, I think. I basically do my quick rough sketch, which this one actually doesn't look as rough as some of my sketches look. I mean, I do have lots of like weird lines and stuff going on, and yeah, I get my rough sketch going. And then I also at the same time start thinking about text placement, which is what I was doing here. I was just kind of like quickly putting the text over into where I thought would be good. I know that will probably move, but at least I have sort of like a rough idea of where I want it to be on the page. You know, I had played with it, maybe putting it up here, but actually I think bringing the eye down below the flowers made a little bit more sense and just felt a little bit more balanced. So that's why I have those there. I also at the same time was thinking about my colors. I keep doing that. On my color palette that I want to do. So in Procreate, I really like the feature of having a color palette that I call it my signature color palette, but basically it's a palette I've built up over time of like all of the colors that I like to use regularly in my work, and most of my pieces, if not all, yeah, I think pretty much all, have one or two or made up of entirely these colors in this palette. So that way I'm not starting from scratch again. It's kind of like the recurring theme. I have this system in place that I can use to make my work look consistent, but also it's colors that I really like, and it's colors that for the most part tend to work well together. So it's very individual how you come up with your color palette, and that's a whole nother topic, but this is the one that I use and the one that I made. So when I was thinking about the colors for this, I kind of started with vase actually, because that's what's the most traditional and what I wanted to stick with, because I love blue and white pottery. So I started with that, and then I thought, what's a contrasting complementary color would be orange, and I liked the idea of having that contrast there of the blue and the orange. And then I thought about other colors that I'd seen in the images that I was like looking at, and also just a color. This is like my favorite color. I like using it for most of my in pretty much all my work. I have this color, and I also thought it would be very pretty as like a floral color. Then that leads to the leaves. You got to think about different greens in the leaves and what looks good. I think this green here is one that is in my color palette, but I thought maybe it might be a bit too dark. I kind of like the idea of a lighter green, so I think I actually grabbed this lighter green from here. I don't think it might actually be that one, but I use this as like a kind of framework, but then if I need to grab other colors, I will, like, yeah. And then this one, I'm not sure yet, but I just kind of liked the way it looked. So that's where I was at with that. So yeah, I've got all this done. I don't have my text in properly yet, but that's okay. So at this point, I go about it a couple ways. So I think the next point is that I do my final outline. So what I like to do is turn down the opacity of this, and then I go in with my outline color to make my actual outlines that will be there, because by the end of the design, when this card is completely done, this will not be here. So I use pink, and you can see it doesn't quite match up because I've already moved things around. But yeah, I use pink. I really just like the way it looks. It's just part of my style. I like the way it looks in like a drawing, because here I can show actually an example, a really good example. So I outlined this in pink. This is another card, and I just really like the way it kind of gives like a bit of a highlight on the cat. And I don't keep it everywhere. You can kind of see a little bit of it poking out there, but I just like having a signature kind of color that I can, selectively show if I want. And also it kind of provides nice undertones as well, even though it might not be showing all the way through. It's just personal style choice. So that is my final outline. That is what will be showing through selectively. So I do that, and then I start adding in the text, and I'm almost done actually. I'll quickly talk about the text, and I think that's the last big kind of thing. So the text is also a system. Big surprise. And the text is one that I came up with. I was heavily inspired by a few different people. I love Emma Bridgewater, if anybody's familiar with Emma Bridgewater's work. And I also really like Natalie Leite. Basically, I was just kind of trying to combine, Katie Daisy as well. I was trying to like draw inspiration from the text styles and the things that I really love and create my own thing off of that. So I did create this like system of text, or I keep saying text, but I mean like hand lettering. And basically I have all my letters in these two, and I can grab copy and they're each in an individual layer, and I can copy and paste them to make up the words, and then as I make the words, I put them in another one, so that way if I need, like, if I'm doing another birthday card, I can literally just grab birthday and copy it and paste it over. That being said, I do like the handmade look. I don't want things to be perfect. You know, I do like a little bit of, like, things don't 100% like match up. You know, I'm not being a perfectionist at all. I want things to kind of like be a little bit like wonky, I guess you would say, or like, you know, just not perfect. I want it to look handmade. And that goes for like the S here is kind of like crooked. So I want the text to be consistent across like everything, but I also want it to look handmade. So you can see for most of my cards, I think so far I've kept the pink. Oh, for this one, I did like a darker outline to make it show up just a bit more. That one I changed it to blue. So when I change colors, I'll literally go through and do it by hand. Like, I'm not gonna do a fill or do copy paste for that. I'm gonna draw it. So for this one, I got my text in here. And I just like literally positioned it, and moved it around or changed it or whatever. So I did that until I was happy with it. And then I started going in with my colors. So this is where I'm at currently, and my background as well. I'm not 100% convinced actually about my background currently, so I'm gonna keep going. But yeah, from the outline and after I have the text, then it's just a matter of going in and coloring and picking, you know, kind of making decisions as I go, smaller decisions, not big decisions. And things can always be changed, which is the beauty of digital illustration. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions or want me to go more into depth, or if I missed anything big. Hopefully this is helpful. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to share. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Okay, bye.